Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Comfort, or a state of physical ease. But it's fascinating how one word can so drastically change a definition. Take comfort zone, for example, a settled method of working that requires little effort and yields only barely acceptable results. Are you sitting comfortably? So no, I'm not asking for you to consider whether you've got sofas and cushions and blankets, but I'm asking you to consider how comfortably you're sitting in life. This is something that has fascinated me for a long time, the idea of human potential alongside drive, determination, and ambition. When I was younger, I often felt like the only one thinking further than what's for dinner, and it dawned on me that young people don't push themselves how they could be. And naturally, that led me to think of all people. Do we push ourselves, or do we settle? Studies show that 31% of people can't even remember the last time they left their comfort zone. But this doesn't mean you have to hitch a ride on a shark across the Pacific, but it can be small things, a little different to your normal routine, or just going the extra mile. Every day you can step outside your comfort zone. You can choose not to take the conventional route. After all, living with ease isn't living, it's dying. Let me explain. Living an easy life, cozy within your comfort zone seems like a good idea, but essentially means that you're foregoing life and awaiting death. Humans improve with struggle. So if we push the barriers, we will grow. And ultimately, accomplishment really means living every day to the fullest. And living is evolution, and if we want to evolve, we must grow. The human potential movement dates back to 1960, but even goes as far as 1943, with Maslow's theory of self-actualization, or what a man can be, he must be. Most interestingly, this movement has a premise that through working towards our full potential, we can actually experience a higher or exceptional quality of life, full of accomplishment. So if we know that ultimately pushing those barriers does breed happiness, why do we sit back and wait for everything to fall at our feet? Think of a world where humans did do things beyond where they may think their capabilities lie. Think of the pace of life. Think of the technological impact. But not only would we physically advance, but with this growth comes a healthy growth mindset. There's nothing more fulfilling than accomplishing something you never thought you could. So what is stopping you? What's stopping you taking that leap of faith? It's your mind. The mind almost has full control most of the time. So I whittled it down and categorized these barriers into 4 groups. The first is childhood. The second is fear of change. The third, fear of failure. And lastly, the need for approval. Let's start with childhood, the origin of all behaviors, right? Nature or nurture. Our self-limiting beliefs do come from the way we are brought up as children, and then how we're integrated into society. From their first steps, we box children off into categories like, she's a loud one, or he's just shy and she's so independent already. But these categories stick with children subconsciously and lead them into a life where they live to how they're expected to rather than how they want to. And this remains, and it stays with them all the way through adulthood. But it can be conquered. And fear of change. It's deep-rooted into humans, literally registered as an error in the brain. But how are we to improve without a little bit of change? It can be conquered. Fear of failure, arguably the most common or understood barrier, the idea that we should not do something if we don't think we'll succeed. I think it's crazy. How are we to know if we're going to succeed if we haven't even tried? So if you take one thing from my talk today, it will be this. If you choose to push yourself, it takes a strong person to succeed. But it takes a stronger one to fail and get back up again. And yet so many of us are still afraid of this prospect. But it can be conquered. And lastly, the need for approval. The need for validation is an epidemic in current society. Young people turn into adults who seek gratification for everything they do, whether that's outside their comfort zone or even inside it. And we will not grow if we remain this way. But it can be conquered. And I'm not here to present you with a whole long list of problems, but instead to provide you, also shed some light on the potential solutions. And these solutions could provide us with some huge growth. The mind is a powerful thing, but my mind is mine and your mind is yours. So we have full control over these barriers. Firstly, don't forget that you can rewrite your story. Who you think you are now isn't set in stone. So if you feel weighed down by being told that you're shy, rewrite it. Be loud or be quiet. Just be unapologetically who you want to be now. After all, if you put off your aims and aspirations for just a week, you could have missed 1,000 opportunities. And fear of change comes back to our comfort zones. But why limit ourselves to a small area of growth when we can step out and utilize unlimited potential? It's a no-brainer in more than one sense. It's a no-brainer because your brain will say no to this change. But it's also a no-brainer because, of course, you should embrace it. Because your brain will adapt, it will get on board, and it will help steer you in the right direction. And you've probably heard the next one before. Turn your fear into fuel. Make it enhance your performance. But it's this skill of harnessing fear that is arguably one of the most sought-after skills in humans, because everyone struggles with it. But those who use their fear and conquer their fear go on to do great things. And on a more practical level, to overcome the seeking of validation and approval, it's all about the plan. You may have huge aspirations, and they may at first seem impossible, but you must remind yourself that these aims are feasible. And making a plan in order to do this keeps you grounded. For example, I have high hopes for my own future career, but by understanding, looking into, and getting to know those smaller steps that it will take me to get there, makes it seem all that closer to my reach. And with this research, it made me wonder, why is it that people do choose the conventional route? And it always led back to the same thing, a steady career, or an easy, steady life. And you may wonder, what is the point of all of this when you could have that steady career? My answer lies in an inspirational man called Steve Plain. He had an untold passion for mountaineering, which he never chose to pursue to maintain his career in accounting. Devastatingly, in 2014, he broke his neck in a surfing accident, and he was told he'd never walk again, and would likely spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Just 9 months later, he began planning an expedition to reach the 7 highest summits in the world. And just 3 years after breaking his neck, he started this expedition. Not only did he complete this expedition in record time, but he defied all the odds. But how is it possible? Because the long-term view of him having this exceptional goal helped pull him through his recovery. Steve learned the true value of life and understood that seize the day mantra that we all hear, and it proved worth it. So, how do you see it? Steve's story shows us the benefits you can gain from knowing the true value of life. But I think it's more important that we see it for ourselves, that we push the boundaries, and we do that thing that we've always wanted to do. Because after all, if you don't do it, you'll never know what it felt like. And you'll never know what you could have gained from it. And please, let's not be passive humans. Let's take an active role in living our own lives and finding our own path. not simply just conforming to society. Be your own boss, conquer your fears, and utilize opportunity. Whether it's big or small, on your own or in a group, or just a risk, go ahead. And so, I ask you again, are you sitting comfortably?